So we're going to talk about, as I mentioned before, benefit risk evaluation of an artificial intelligence machine learning enabled device. Artificial intelligence machine learning is pretty big these days, right? And FDA has already cleared more than 500 AI ML based devices. And when it comes to benefit risk, this could be even more challenging for an AI ML device. And that's why I chose this example for our discussion today. So let's take the big picture. Why evaluate benefit risk in the first place, right? You might say, hey, it's an ISO 14971 requirement. Yes, it is a requirement. But what is the big picture? Why? Why are we doing this? Because it is related directly to this notion of safe and effective, which is a regulatory concept. It's a regulatory bar you have to clear before FDA will approve or clear your device. You have to demonstrate safe and effective. And how do you do that? Medical devices are expected to provide a reasonable assurance of safety and effectiveness by weighing the probable benefit to health from the use of the device against any probable risk of injury or illness from such use. So there are a lot of keywords here, right? So let's spend a little bit of time there to understand what it means and how it's done. It's a reasonable assurance, which means there's some judgment involved. Reasonable compared to what? Second keyword is probable. Probable benefit versus probable risk. That means there has to be based on some data, some evidence, not a hypothetical guesswork. So let's dig a little bit further in this and see how does the FDA evaluate safety and effectiveness in the first place. So safe, probable benefits to health outweigh any probable risks. So it's a balancing activity, right? We are trying to see if the probable benefits outweigh the probable risks. That will be safe. And how about effective? Effective is kind of related, but they have also this qualification here, which says significant portion of the target population experiences clinically significant results. Meaning what you're promising to deliver to the intended use population is actually experienced by them in a clinically significant way. That would be considered effective. So keep those two things in mind as we go through our slides today. Okay, so let's quickly review the ISO 14971 requirements. In clause 7.4, you have benefit risk analysis, but that applies to an individual residual risk. So if a residual risk is not judged acceptable, using the criteria established in the risk management plan, and further risk control is not practicable, the manufacturer may gather and review data and literature to determine if the benefits of the intended use outweigh this residual risk. So this is kind of an optional sort of provision in 14971. You may choose to use it if one or more of the individual residual risks are not still meeting your acceptability criteria. So you could do that, but we're not going to talk about the individual residual risk benefit risk analysis today. We're going to focus more on clause 8, which is evaluation of overall residual risk. So we have to do it if we are complying to 14971. Where we get tripped up is how to do it. And there isn't much guidance available except this FDA guidance. And even that proves to be quite difficult to understand. And that's why I'm hoping that this step-by-step example that I'm going to share with you today will actually help you understand that a little bit better. So clause 8, evaluation of overall residual risk. After all risk control measures have been implemented and verified, the manufacturer shall evaluate the overall residual risk posed by the medical device, taking into account the contributions of all residual risks in relation to the benefits of the intended use, using the method and the criteria for acceptability of the overall residual risk defined in the risk management plan. So it's an aggregate analysis. It's a higher level, overall level, and you have to consider all individual residual risks as well as in aggregation what it means. It doesn't tell you how to do it because there are many different ways of doing it, and you have to define that in your risk management plan. So I have seen two approaches in my practice to evaluate the overall residual risk. The first one is what I would call approach 1, applicable to rather more mature, lower risk devices, on those devices you might have a lot of information, a lot of data already available. So in this particular case, you can visually display all residual risks, individual residual risks that is, on the risk matrix based on their individual probability and severity levels. If all are acceptable according to your criteria, then you may consider the overall residual risk to be acceptable, but it's always a good idea to include a summary statement in the risk management report to provide an overall assessment of benefit risk from a clinical perspective. So if you're using this method, for example, you might have all these individual residual risks. You can map them out on a risk matrix like this. Put that as an appendix in your risk management report. Write up a paragraph using a clinical argument to justify your benefit risk evaluation. That would be a way to do it, and I've seen that work really well in practice. Has not been challenged in audits if you are doing it properly and you are documenting it properly and you have a good clinical rationale. And you may have to compare against similar devices available in the market. So you may use some of the factors we are talking about today to write up your summary even in this scenario. But more often than not, you have devices which are complex, highly sophisticated, and generally high risk. So what do you do in that case? In that case, you can use a qualitative or a semi-quantitative analysis using different factors in the FDA guidance. We're going to talk about those. Utilize medical expertise to rank each factor on a predefined scale using clearly defined criteria. Summarize the overall benefit risk in the risk management report. So this is more of a consultative sort of process. This requires a little bit of more analysis of different factors, weighing one against the other, and that is where the FDA guidance that I'm going to talk about today is going to be very useful to you. And we'll see that how you can actually use it using the example. So here's the guidance document. There's just a first cover page of the guidance document, and it is meant for pre-market submissions for PMAs and de novos. Now, we are not talking about pre-market here, although you may need to use it for pre-market. I'm talking in general. In general, when we have to do benefit risk evaluation, this is a very good resource. Now, having said that, FDA has additional guidance documents for uncertainty of benefits as well. That's a level of detail I will not go today, but those are resources available to you as well. So in the rest of the presentation today, we will dig deeper into this guidance document, especially the benefit risk assessment worksheet that FDA has provided in this guidance. We'll go step by step, and we'll use an example of an artificial intelligence device that was recently cleared about a few years ago, which I think is a pretty novel device. And we're going to use that example to retroactively sort of reverse engineer this worksheet. I'm sure they submitted this worksheet because it was a de novo. So we're going to try to reverse engineer based on publicly available information. So I don't have any inside information or any other details behind it. I'm reading what they have provided in a public way, and I'm reverse engineering this worksheet. So hopefully that will be useful to you.